"Sam, how can we help her?" "She is suffering?" my wife asked me anxiously. When we returned home from my mother-in-law was going through the loss of her husband and had been in a state of constant depression and nervous breakdowns for 6 months. Before this tragic event, in her 45 years, she looked quite young and attractive. But now, when she neglected to take care of herself, her appearance began to age rapidly. It was painful to look at her, seeing how much she had changed. Her lively smile had been replaced by a blank stare, and the warmth she usually radiated seemed to have gone out completely. When I first met Linda, my imagination immediately soared. Her straight facial features and voluminous figure couldn't help but attract anyone. In addition to great looks, she liked to wear rather open and provocative clothes. It was a pleasure to admire her, and a couple of times I even caught myself peeking at her. She exuded confidence and charisma, traits that made her even more attractive. But everything changed in an instant, and now Linda was always wearing makeup, no makeup, and unkempt hair. My wife Emma and I were closest to her, so there was no hope that, like magic, someone else would fly in and bring her back to life. Emma and I knew we had to take the initiative and help bring Linda's spirits back up, and we felt we were the only ones capable of doing so. "You're a genius, Sam, that much is obvious. But what man would want to date such an apathetic woman with faded eyes?" "Okay, let's go the other way. Take her to the beauty parlor, get her hair and manicures and whatever else they have, and give me the money for it. It's not cheap." "I will. Where else am I going to go?" After thinking about it for a while, I made up my mind. When Emma gave me the approximate cost of getting Linda back to her best, I was a little surprised at the high price, but nodded an agreement, keeping my word. It wasn't just about the money, it was about seeing Linda happy again, and that was worth every penny. How Emma had managed to get Linda into the beauty parlor I didn't understand at all, but the important thing was that it had happened. As I sat at work, I sadly watched a decent amount of money drain from my account, obviously intended to fund their beauty treatments. However, as it turned out, it was worth it. When I pulled up to Linda's house, I didn't recognize her. Instead of her usual sad figure, there stood a mature beauty with a renewed sparkle in her eyes. Her hair glistened, her makeup was subtle but effective, and her clothes fit her figure in a way that made her look confident and radiant. Em and I had agreed beforehand that I would drive Linda home and that I should shower her with compliments. But I didn't even have to think of anything. The words of admiration just flowed out of me naturally. I watched her blush with embarrassment right before my eyes, and felt warmth in my chest as I saw her come alive again. A miracle had happened. Linda seemed to blossom more and more each hour, and when it was time to leave, we did so, reluctantly. I didn't want to leave this woman who had found the joy of life again, but Emma and I needed some alone time too. That evening, we sat in the living room and discussed the transformation we had witnessed. It seemed surreal. Emma talked about how much it meant to her to see her mother happy again. We made plans for future visits with Linda, wanting to keep her spirits up. The next day, I was surprised to find a call from Linda on my phone. "Sam, hi. You helped me so much yesterday. Thank you. I'd love to see you again today," Linda said. I replied, "I'm so glad too, but we have work days today and tomorrow, so it'll be hard for Emma and I to get out. But if you need help, I can come over to your place tonight." "That would be great," she said, her tone getting a little warmer. "Honestly, I've been meaning to see you." Her words puzzled me, but I didn't bother asking what she meant. It could have been something simple, like needing a man's help around the house. But why would she want to see me without my wife? I pondered her words all day, my mind full of questions and possibilities. I got the answer when I pulled up in front of Linda's house. She was wearing a light-colored blouse, rather boldly unbuttoned all the buttons. "You look great," I said, deciding to clarify. "On a date?" "No, Sam," she replied. "It's just that your words and compliments yesterday made me want to experiment with my appearance. I'd like to know, were you flattering me yesterday, or did you really think I looked good?" "Linda, of course I was telling the truth, honestly. You looked attractive yesterday, and today you look spectacular and daring." "Thank you, Sam. Your words mean a lot." She smiled, her eyes lingering on mine for a moment longer than seemed appropriate. I felt my pulse quicken, and the air around us grew thick with tension. "But what are we doing standing here in the hallway? Let me get you something to eat," she said, and led me into the kitchen. Linda had come alive, and it showed. She had prepared 3 meals just to please me personally. She moved around the kitchen, climbing on high shelves, stretching like a cat, as if trying to get my attention to her body. I convinced myself that Linda was definitely trying to get my attention. She looked very bold, but at the same time strange and unusual. The food she was cooking was delicious, and I found myself watching her more than I should have. She was constantly looking back at me, her eyes mischievous, as if daring me to act on my feelings. I wanted to respond to Linda's advances, but I was married to her daughter. She saw my indecision and seemed to enjoy it. There was something playful in her movements and the way she spoke to me. Her voice was soft and almost flirtatious. Finally, before I pulled away, she moved closer and kissed me on the cheek. "Sam, I'm going crazy. I need someone," she said. "I need someone for challenges." I wanted to respond. All I could do was nod and say I would call her tomorrow. I hurried away, trying to calm my racing heart. The scent of her perfume still lingered on my skin, and I couldn't escape the feeling of being torn. Sure, hearing this from my mother-in-law was the last thing I expected. The worst part was that I wanted her too. I had always been a faithful husband. Cheating on my wife with her own mother would be a double betrayal. That night, I couldn't keep it from Emma. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, and I grew increasingly nervous, waiting for her reaction. Finally, she said, "I'm probably weird, but I'm asking you to do this. Give her what she wants. We've worked so hard to bring her back to life." Her words shook me, and I saw the conflict in her eyes. She loved her mother and wanted her mother to be happy, even if it meant crossing a line that most would never dare to cross. I didn't know how to react, so I smiled and said, "You're not weird. You just love your mom." The next day, I texted Linda that I would be there at 7 p.m. As the time drew nearer, I grew more and more anxious. I had never imagined anything like this, not even in my wildest fantasies. But now it was happening for real. Linda met me in an even shorter skirt and see-through blouse. One might have thought I had come to see a woman of easy virtue, but Linda was not like that. She was confident, self-aware, and able to show off her best features. The way she looked at me left no doubt about her intentions. There was a hunger in her eyes that both frightened and pleased me. Linda greeted me cordially, and I could sense that she had prepared something special for the evening. The table was set, candles were burning, and soft music was playing in the background. My movements were probably awkward, like those of an inexperienced teenager. We didn't need any extra words. Everything seemed surreal. Seemed to go into the picture and say that, we're holding up to the perfect ideal. I didn't expect Linda to be so bold, but after everything she got up and went to the kitchen, saying, "Now dinner, don't even think about arguing." She smiled over her shoulder, and I couldn't help but smile back. As strange as it was, I knew we'd be back together again later. It was like a dream I didn't want to wake up from. When we sat down to eat, I watched her, her fingers playing with the fork, her eyes never leaving mine. There was an intimacy between us now, something unspoken but understood. We finished dinner, and without a word, she took my hand and led me back. This time there was no hesitation, no doubt. It was right, even though I knew it was wrong. The boundaries we had crossed were significant, but at that moment it didn't matter. When it was over, Linda stood up, adjusting her blouse, and said, "Now we don't need to hurry. Sit with me, Sam." I nodded, feeling a strange mixture of emotions, guilt, excitement, and something else I couldn't put a name to. She poured us both a glass of wine, and we sat together, talking as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened. In a way, it was comforting just to be near her, feel her presence, and know that for the moment, each of us had found what we were looking for. The evening ended with a promise that we would meet again. Leaving her house, I felt a mixture of elation and fear. It was something dangerous, something that could destroy everything I had, but I couldn't bring myself to stop it. The alluring Linda, her warmth, her smile, her laughter, it was all too intoxicating to let go.